executive function. Again, we're at the higher order thinking, right? And lots of information out there with regards to executive function and new research happening all the time. When we think about the articles that exist now, back in 1985, there were about 5 articles that existed about executive function. Now, there's over 6,000. It's a hot topic. That's why we fill these rooms every year. We call this executive function training because it's huge. It is a really hot topic. Hopefully, because of the way we're weaving this into this framework, it's not the next flash in the pan because executive function is part of our brains. We all have them or not, but we must identify and work with kids along that continuum. And remember, children and adolescents are developing executive functions. We are all developing executive functions well into our 20s, up until our late 20s. That development happens. So figuring out what's typical development and what's not can be an issue. But we do know that there's some things that we can put in place right away that does take care of some of those things right from the get-go. These are just the books on executive function on my shelf, and this one actually was updated, so it looks like that. Tons and tons of resources out there on executive function. This handout is in the Dropbox, so I'm not going to spend some time on it, but developmental stages of these were broken down by the Center of Developing Child at Harvard. There's also all of Chapter 2 in this manual is dedicated to developmental stages, so across all of these domains. So let's talk about 3 principles of taking care of this and making sure, yes, executive function is higher order thinking, but it's addressing attention, memory processing, speed, sensory motor, language learning, all of those things below that hierarchy. Purposeful structures and routines. This, if you were a participant in the Sarah Ward training, you're going to see a lot of Sarah Ward stuff up here, and I give her all the credit for that. But the purposeful structures and routines, when we talk about the ways that our environments are set up to lend itself to kids accessing, working within, understanding their surroundings, it's a key part of learning, obviously, and it's a key part of how we can take care of some of those things right from the get-go, and so they don't have to worry about it. It's not causing anxiety. It's not causing question. They can access their environment and then deal with the things that they really need to deal with by way of learning or behavior. So we talk about, with Sarah, we talked about classroom zones. We also talk about those zones involving students. It has to be meaningful for that to be an area that they're interacting with. They know exactly what the meaning of it is, what the purpose of it is, and how to access and use that as a strategy. Could be to get unstuck, could be to get some information, whatever. So we talk about explicitly teaching what those are, how to access them, what the purpose is, and reinforcement, and all the teaching strategies that we know about good teaching come into play. So teach it, reinforce it, practice it, reinforce it, right? And generalize if we're generalizing across. But let's look at some examples. When Sarah came in, she came into Jeffco, and we spent a full day before the Jeffco training in a middle school in Jeffco doing what she called extreme classroom makeover. It wasn't really extreme at all, as a matter of fact. So, but these were the before and after pictures that we took, and the reasons and the kind of what we did. So part of the pictures before and after, our middle school math teacher let us in, and she was a fabulous teacher. She had it going on. We observed a few of her classes. It was just her, no paras, no other personnel in the room. 3 specific and distinct groups going on with very different activities at hand. They had a direct learning where she was doing direct teaching and instruction. And that was here at this area, so this is the direct learning. There was a group off to the right that was doing some workbook and homework kinds of things and special activities that were related to that learning. And then there was the group off to the left that had computers. And they were doing resource finding on computers and had a specific job to do in that group. Beautifully run classroom. So I could not say enough about this teacher. The only thing we did was do some tweaks with regards to setting up the structures and her classroom areas so that kids knew a little bit more and they were a little bit more meaningful to them in accessing them. So this was the main learning and instruction area. These posters are motivational. There's a persevere over here. This green poster is what they're actively learning now. So all we did was we moved these, we took away the number line because they never even used it, and it was broken up across the windows, so it was difficult to use anyway. So we took that away. We looked at categorizing or kind of grouping all of the motivational stuff together. We added gradual release of responsibility, which there's a little bit of information in your, is basically the I do, we do, you do model. And the Velcro arrow here, she could move depending on which lesson and where they were in that gradual release. So kids knew exactly what their level of expectations were. It takes away some anxiety for kids. So we added that, and all we added over here was learning now. So that was labeled. They knew exactly what that meant, what that poster had to do with. And there were the math formulas on that poster of what they were learning. So it was a cueing system too of like, well, I'm kind of lost. Oh yeah, they could go right there next to the main instructional area and get reminded. She already had a homework zone. All we added were the words. It was already there. So kids already accessed it. The front door, the door that you walk in is right over here, so they would come right in. So it was already kind of a routine. When I enter this classroom, I drop off my homework and I go to my class. Here's another example of a younger homework zone. And this was kind of a catch-all area. This graph was a dry erase board. They never used it. It was just kind of put over there. And all of these posters were posters of past lessons that they had done and mastered. So this was their strategies wall. This is what, we've already learned this. But they could go back and revisit it if they needed to. So all we did was make sure that all of them were legible and viewable from the area, and we just put got it right up there. So it brought purpose to that area. They knew that if they needed to remember what we did last week, I can go visually. I don't have to go over there physically, but I can go visually to an area and be reminded of those. Younger writing zone, middle school writing zone. They have the Literacy Cafe reminders up here, all of the materials needed. So when we think about purposeful structures and routines, and we want to make sure that this is a routine, we have to explicitly teach. But wall space is used for that. And if wall space is used for anything other than an educational or motivational, what should it be used for? Maybe some rest, right? Maybe some visual rest, so that there's not just everything up on the walls that's overwhelming. If kids are already overstimulated or have a hard time calming down from being overstimulated, it's not going to help. So we might have to do an area that has very little on it, or a calming board, or some type of something that provides a visual rest area. So if I'm getting overwhelmed, I might integrate a strategy of kind of focusing on that wall and calming down, or doing my counting, or whatever my strategies are. And the use of borders. We know organization is an executive function. Being able to organize my thinking and organizing my materials and my environment around me could be impacted. So if you're doing it for me and helping create barriers between those areas of learning or information, all the better, right? Because when we think about how overwhelming it can be to open up a secondary math book, we've got a chart, we've got a graph, we've got a quote, we've got a narrative, we've got steps 1, 2, 3, whatever, and that's one page. I could be overwhelmed just looking at one page of my textbook. So if there's anything that can lend itself in our environment to help organize our thinking or categorize what we're providing, all the better. This was the agenda. So they did classroom walkthrough. Are you guys familiar with classroom walkthrough kinds of ideas? Yeah. And so they had an agenda. So all we did was we put a border so that all of this could be used for whatever else. And we just reorganized these agenda times. And get ready, do, and done, and get done is also another Sarah Ward strategy that we'll be going into in just a second. So she actually color-coded opening, the do, meaning math, and the expectations, and the closing, the done part of the activity. This was just another area that they could go get their homework. We made this the challenge question. This calendar was never used. We took down the calendar and put the challenge question, which was actually over by the strategy wall, where assignments, and because that's extra credit. So I can go get my assignment, and if I need some extra credit, it's right there in the same vicinity, and it makes sense. Reading and calming area, both, so a dual purpose area or zone. And then zones of regulation is actually, how many use zones of regulation? I've heard of that. So it's a really quick and easy kind of way that you can put language and to how you're feeling emotionally and regulating emotionally. And so this was actually their zones of regulation in a zone in the classroom because they use that language daily. Also a study zone. We can create a study zone, and this is in your handouts, right? Okay, perfect. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but it can be very purposeful to walk through a full week of expectations and help you get through that in a very organized and planful and sequential way. Gradual release of responsibility model goes back research years and years ago. It came to be. It really can help kids who experience anxiety as to what the expectations are and what their role in learning is, because I can show them exactly where we are, of what I expect of them. If you are just listening because this is a new concept, you can be at ease. You can just listen and learn and not have to worry about performing it in a minute. If we're down that road, they might need to, but they should have all of those steps in place and some reminders perhaps on the walls or within the lesson that help them access. So this is what we did on that wall, is put a Velcro sticky on that so that she could indicate you are here with an arrow regardless of where they were. Principle 2, time management skills. Time management skills are really, really difficult for kids. And it's a really complex concept for kids. So when we look at this clock was created by an adult with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. That's what she saw when she looked at an analog clock. It's 12 noon, by the way. Wouldn't know it. But think about how difficult, as an adult, it is to manage your life. She had a job, she held a job, but she did not learn the concept of time, truly learn the concept of time, to be able to manipulate and manage time concepts in her life until age 30. So don't give up hope. There is hope. Kids can, and young adults and into adulthood can learn the concepts. We just need to keep trying. But if there are some things that we need to weave in that help with that concept, then let's do it. One of Sarah Ward's strategies is the working clock. The working clock can be done in lots of different ways, and can be scaffolded depending on the learner level that you're working with and age level. So when we look at the working clock that she has, now these can be purchased on her website of 360thinking.com, but it can be purchased at Walmart or Target as well. So the thing that's unique about the ones that she offers, or that you might want to look for, depending on your kids, is it's tickless. So for those kids that are like OCD or micro-focused on sounds or sensory issues or whatever, it doesn't tick. So that's a plus for some kids. It's also metal with a glass front. You can do plastic with a plastic front and use of a vis-a-vis versus a dry erase, but those are just the differences. If it's metal, she also has a group of magnets, or you can buy or make magnets that can mark different areas on here so that it'll be another cueing system. So you can mark a halfway point and do a check-in, etc. We know that this can also be done low-tech. I mean, this is pretty low-tech, but low-tech even more by a plastic sheet and a template. So we're going to practice on that. But really quick, so I'm able to show this in my class and perhaps have students do it in a way that's meaningful once they learn it for their home or their classroom assignments. So what I'm going to do is specifically mark my get ready time. So I'm going to draw and count out for kids in 5-minute increments. So we're going to say it's this time anyway. It's 5:45, sorry, can't even tell time. 5:45, but this time I'm going to give us 5 minutes for transition or prep. Get ready, okay? So I'm going to actually count 5 minutes from the time on the clock and indicate that. I can visually see time. I can visually understand what a movement of a second hand or a minute hand is actually doing and how that relates to my task at hand, because I have that much time to prepare and get ready. So I'm going to get materials, whatever the case may be. Then I'm going to have 20 minutes, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes for that activity. I'm marking that as well. I can do it in a different color so that it's better viewed, whatever. I'm also going to mark the halfway point. I can do it with a marker, I can do it with a magnet on the outside, I can do it however it makes sense, but I'm going to mark halfway point, and that's going to be my check-in. So what, does she say it up there? No. So what Sarah Ward does is if we think about learning or a task, if it's a new concept, say I've got a math worksheet, and it's pretty new to me, this concept, and I'm actively learning these concepts in math. I'm going to spend 3 minutes. She does the 1 to the 3 minute time frame. 3 minutes is allotted for each and every question. If it's a review and I've actually mastered that, I'm only going to give 1 minute. Okay? So I'm going to say I'm somewhere in the middle, and I've got 10 questions, and it's going to take me 20 minutes because I'm doing about 2 minutes per question. All right? So that's how I'm kind of figuring out what this activity is going to be. And once I hit this halfway point, I'm going to do a check-in. Am I at question 10? Am I behind? Am I ahead? And if we've built this in and scaffolded it such that this learning is kids are participatory, they could be doing their own, right? They could be looking at their own assignment and figuring out how much time is this going to take me. And we might be in the beginning way, way off, but that's okay. I'm understanding time and what it takes me to get through a specific task. I think adolescents are notorious for saying, how long does it take you to get ready in the morning? Oh, 10 minutes. Yeah, that's snooze, right? It's more like an hour. And really that concept is a tough one. We know brain development, we are developing that aspect of our brain. So helping kids with strategies like this help see and sense the passage of time and can really lend itself to planning, executive function areas really, really well. So principle 3 is creating future thinkers. So when we think about future thinkers, We know, hang in there guys, a few more minutes. We know that future thinking is seeing the future, understanding what the goal is. All right? I know where I am now and what the expectation is as to where I'm going to be at the end of this task or this assignment. What it looks like, what it feels like, and understanding the steps to get there. So it's problem solving. It is executive function at its best right here. But there's ways to break it down to pay attention to those lower domain areas in that framework in a way that really makes some sense and helps fill in those gaps, so to speak, for kids that may or may not have it. One way, and it definitely has to be specifically taught and explicitly taught. We don't just gain this by accident. So there's different models out there. When we look at Mark Ilvasacker, he's was big in the area of brain injury, and Tim Feeney. They call it goal, plan, do, review. Think Kids, there's a collaborative problem-solving approach out there, and then Sarah Ward's Get Ready, Do, Done. And that's what we're going to apply here. But there's lots of different ways when we think about problem-solving strategies and problem-solving models out there that we can pull from. So Sarah's Get Ready, Do, Done does a couple of different things. It maps out planning and sequencing of steps, and it also breaks out task planning from task execution. So, but they're put together very specifically, obviously. So task planning is steps 1, 2, 3, and task execution is 4, 5, 6. So when we look at task planning, this model kind of works backwards. So we're backward planning, and then we are doing execution. So in the planning stages, we start with what does done look like? What is our goal? And we really specifically define that, draw that out, whatever that looks like. And if it's, if writing is an issue, maybe making an outline is really a barrier to me. But what does it look when it's done is going to look the same, right? So the steps in getting there could be different depending on the learner. But what it looks like when it's done is consistent. And we all know and can all see what it looks like because we're able to really define that and draw that out. Step 2 is, what do I need to do to get there? Remember, we're in the planning stage. So what are the steps that I will be doing to get there? What are the sequence of steps? And then planning for the get ready. Step 3 is, what materials do I need? Those are your task planning steps, 1, 2, 3. Then we go into task execution. So I know what it looks like, I know how to get there, and I've identified the materials I need. Step 4 is gathering the materials that I need. So I'm actively, these are my action steps, my execution steps. I'm going and gathering those, or making arrangements, or whatever the case may be. I'm doing. This is my actual action to do my project. I'm doing my project, whatever that is, and we'll go through an example. And then 6, am I done? Does it look like step 1? Does it look like I need to review compare those two? Does it look like what I had in mind originally as my goal? So let's go through this really quickly. Our assignment is a 4 to 5 page essay. When we break down that essay, I know it's going to be 4 to 5 pages. It needs to be double spaced. I need to have a minimum of 3 ideas fleshed out within that, and I need to include citations. Pretty straightforward. That's my assignment. What does it look like? I'm going to draw it out. Okay? I'm going to draw it out. Here are my 5 pieces of paper. If I had a dry white erase board, I would just draw it. But my 5 pieces of paper. I have a title. My first paragraph is going to be my intro. My second paragraph, I'm going to identify my 3 main ideas because that's on my to-do list. My 4th one is I'm going to highlight number 1 of my main ideas and go into some facts. I'm going to do that with number 2. With number 3, I'm going to summarize or create a conclusion summary of that. And I'm going to remember to put my citations. That's what it looks like when I'm done. I've drawn it out. I know exactly what to expect, what that should be when I'm done. Step 2, what do I need to do? I need to create an outline. So I've pretty much already done that, right, within my category. But I'm going to get a little bit more specific in that outline. I'm going to schedule time on my calendar to do my research. I'm going to arrange time on the computer, and whether it's my family computer or a lab or whatever I need to access to be able to do that. I'm going to write, I'm going to edit, I'm going to revise, and I'm going to print my essay, because the expectation is that I actually have to hand this in physically, hard copy, to my teacher on such and such a date. So those are my steps in doing this. What do I need to get ready? All of those materials that I need to get ready. So I'm going to gather those. So that's my task planning. I have a plan in place with steps 1, 2, and 3. So here's my task execution. I'm going to gather my materials that I've identified. I'm going to make sure that I have all of these things. I'm going to pull it all together, do the action steps required to get this all done, edit, revise, and recheck. Does it look like what it was when we identified the future thinking, right, at step 1? Do I have my 4 to 5 pages? Is it double-spaced with the correct margins? Do I have my 3 ideas? Do I have those fleshed out well enough with the facts? Have I done my citations correctly? Have I included all of my research in those citations? And have I turned it in on time in a hard copy? That was the requirement on such and such a date. It breaks it down. If we taught every secondary student these steps for every activity, it might take away a lot of anxiety, right? I might have it spelled out in a way that it makes all the sense in the world. And so if, in fact, this strategy works for a large percentage of your kids, then think about those kids that really aren't getting it, or that need more support, or that need extra stuff. You could just layer that on top, whatever that needs to be. But this could take care of lots of needs of kids, of all kids, right away. Because we know typical development is we're developing these through adolescence. It could take care of all kids in a way. So that's the task execution. So this is a video, very quickly, of our little friend Holden doing the clock and the get ready, do done.
What are you thinking about time? What are you thinking? Put him away. So how much time is that, Holden? What do you think? 30 minutes. Okay.
Holden, how did you decide on 30 minutes?
Well, I looked how much I had,
Okay.
and by looking at it, I simply decided just how long it might take. And I looked at the clock, and I choose 30 minutes.
Okay, cool, thanks.
Are you filming this or taking pictures?
I'm filming it.
Okay.
You're just doing a great job.
Nice. That looks like a good chill zone.
Can you tell me what that chunk of time is for, Holden?
Oh, that's my free time. It means once the screen strikes the red, this is the green thing, which means I just relax and stuff.
Awesome. Sounds good.
such a good job of getting that in there, huh?
Mhm.
That's no time robbers. All right, what else do we need?
I know.
All right. Get ready. Get ready. Can I fix your clock? Sometimes when you bang on this clock, it looks like that we look at their time. Perfect. There we go. See? I stand. Where are we going to check in, you think? About there? All right, what other materials do we need to get ready? Do we need the iPad?
Well, we need a pencil, we need a book, we need paper, and I'm not so sure. What do you think?
Well, it's up to you. Do you want me to read the iPad, or you want the iPad to read to you?
The iPad read to me.
Okay, so can we get it ready?
Landscape Friday. Unlock.
Yeah, this takes a minute.
So he does a good job of keeping us posted. But did you hear him at the beginning where she said, how do you know 30 minutes? And he said, well, I simply looked at the amount of work I need to do and decided it's going to take me 30 minutes because I know my work. Like, don't you know? But this, I mean, obviously he's utilized this strategy a lot and knows it well. So we would have to kind of scaffold up to that point where he's actually independently using it for our students. But very useful tool. We also, Sarah had a video of an older student who integrated this learning strategy at home. Had the working clock and had a workspace with the yellow, red, and green, or yellow, green, and red, set up so that he just, depending on whatever task he had to do, he would automatically go into these sequence of steps of task planning, task organizing, and then task execution. So really a nice way to get or gain some independence with this if your kids are capable of doing that. And anything in between. I mean, we can just do it and model it in the front of the class. We can have our low-tech, ones, and just model it for kids and keep that just as a visual model and everything in between. So that is Get Ready, Do Done, and the working clock.